Hey guys, how's everybody doing? ItZMuRdA here with the second episode of Analyze This, where we're going to take a little bit deeper look into how keybinds work in PlanetSide 2. And in my opinion, keybinds are one of the most essential toolkits at your disposal in any game, and they really go a long way towards making you a better player. The first thing that I do whenever I'm playing any game, for that matter, is spend some time familiarizing myself with the game settings and the keybinds. I make tweaks to them as I feel appropriate. I try to use a lot of the same settings from what I've used in previous games and things like that, and it's definitely something I recommend, like I said, especially when it comes to keeping your binds as similar as possible across different games to build on that muscle memory that we spoke about in episode 1 on scope selection and sensitivity. So now, while keybinds are pretty much the bread and butter, hands down, most important setting in many RPGs and other action-based competitive games, they kind of take a backseat, in my opinion, to mouse sensitivity in first-person shooters. Now, that being said, they still are really, really important, especially in a game like PlanetSide 2, where you have a lot more keybinds at your disposal than you would in, a typical arena first-person shooter type of game. Now, I'll begin by saying that my keybinds are pretty unusual for a number of reasons. The first being that I have a Razer Naga mouse, so some of what I bind might quite frankly be impossible for you to do in your setup if you don't have something like that. Now, the Naga or other MMO mice like it are not really something that I would usually recommend to a person who's looking to play first-person shooters, but I began using mine a few years back during my time spent doing hardcore progression raiding in World of Warcraft, and I haven't really found the need or desire to toss the mouse or the familiarity with having all those extra buttons at my disposal. And then in a game like PlanetSide 2, I'm more than capable of making use of all of the Naga buttons because of all of the binds that you see here, many of them being quite useful. So I'll go over that as well as just a general why I may bind something somewhere, so that even if you don't have an MMO mouse, you can still make use of what's in this video for sure. And if you do, that's bonus points for you. So the next reason you'll see here why my binds are unusual is because of my movement keys. For many years now, I've been playing with the ESDF movement setup instead of using the typical WASD. And I began doing this when playing Unreal Tournament competitively for a number of years, as it effectively gives you an extra 2 keys to the left of your movement keys. Like if you use WASD, you would have Q to your left, whereas if you use ESDF, you have Q, W, and A to your immediate left. Compared to the normal setup. Now, it also has other notable advantages, as you'll see, and I try to make good use of all of the surrounding keys that I've gained from moving to this setup, basically shifting your hand over 1 key to the right. Now, I do definitely recommend this configuration. I absolutely love it, but it's important to note that if you try to switch to it after many years of being familiar with WASD, you'll probably need weeks, maybe months, or a month, depending on how much you play, for it to really feel right to you. So keep that in mind. If you stay persistent with it, I think you'll love it, and I'm pretty confident that you'll increase your potential pretty much in any game that you play. So now, instead of you just staring at the screen while I babble on, let's actually look at them a little bit. I'll start in general, because why not? It's the first tab. I'm not going to go through a lot of really basic or default types of keybinds, which is what most of these are here in general. I don't really use the in-game voice chat that much. I have it on for squad and outfit because some people like to use it. This is one of those Naga binds when you see numpad. So that's my Naga 10 button. It's pretty far, one of the least accessible Naga buttons if I want to talk back to squad guys, but we usually use our own VoIPs. I think most of the rest of this is pretty default. Q is still a good button for me, even with ESDF for spotting. These UI type panel things aren't too important. Expand minimap is important to me. Now that's my W key. So that's that right there between Q and W. Those are 2 keys that you wouldn't have with the WASD already that I'm making use of. Now, I expand my minimap all the time. That is, I'm doing it right here, enlarging the minimap to see a little bit greater distance. The other thing you can do is zoom. A lot of people don't know this. There's a few different levels of zoom for both the expanded and the regular minimap, and that's really important. When I'm flying, I almost fly always at the max zoom. When I'm doing infantry in close quarters, I'm always almost at the minimum zoom, and I use them a lot. Now you'll see here I have numpad plus and minus. That's my 11 and 12 keys on my Naga. Also probably the least accessible keys, but I do have them there so that I can quick switch to zoom them in, as well as expanding my minimap when I need it in a pinch, and I do use that quite a lot. I recommend having those things somewhat accessible if you can. If you go over to Infantry keybinds, there's my movement. I don't use up, down, left, right, obviously, but they're in there anyway. I use ESDF. Spacebar, that's default. Crouch, I use numpad 1, which is my #1 button on my Naga. I really like having crouch on a mouse button, especially if it's one you can hit with your thumb, because you can easily weave that into dodging maneuvers or trying to, you know, peek around a corner, get a shot off on somebody. That's one of the buttons I really like having accessible to my right thumb. Same with sprint/hold breath. That's numpad 2, which is my Naga 2 button right next to the crouch. That's kind of where my thumb sits naturally, and I use that a hell of a lot to stop sprinting, start sprinting, hold breath for sniping, and it's really, really easy. Lots of times your thumb that's on your mouse is not really doing anything, and that's one of those other ones that fit in there really well. Interact, which I think is E for many of you guys by default, is now A, so that's the other button to the left of my ESDF setup that I use. It's kind of just, you know, switching the placement over to make sense with my my switched keybinds for movement, and that works for me real well. I'm happy with it. Now usability, that's your cloak, your heavy shield, things like that. That is Naga 4 for me, so right underneath my crouch button I can really easily slide my thumb down to that and hit that whenever I need to. Doesn't mess up my movement or my aiming or anything like that. That's something really important when you have I should say, abilities that you want to use on the move and or while aiming, while fighting somebody. You want to have accessible to a finger or a key that isn't going to stop you from strafing, isn't going to stop you from aiming or anything like that, so you can continue being 100% effective while still hitting those buttons. Grenade here is G, which might be the default, I'm not even sure, but it's much more accessible to me because it's only 1 key over from ESDF than it would be 2 keys over from WASD, so I left it there. I know a lot of people like having G, or rather their grenade, on their mouse, and that's totally fine too, for the same reasons I just spoke about. You want to be able to throw that grenade without sacrificing your movement or your ability to aim, and that's totally cool, but since I play with F for my strafe right anyway, it's not really a big deal for me to hit G. Like it would be 2 keys over for somebody else. Same deal with reload. That's a really something you want to be very accessible. I have the default bind, but again, it's right next to my movement keys rather than being 2 keys over, so I'm happy with that. Melee attack, I think the default for this is something pretty crazy. Mine is my Naga 3. That's something I started using back in probably Bad Company 2. I really liked having the melee very accessible for my mouse thumb button, and if I'm sprinting, if I'm crouching, if I'm using my ability, it's, you know, a matter of centimeters away to just jab somebody with that knife, and I make a ton of use of that. The knife in this game is 600 hit points worth of damage, 2-hit kill, and often a 1-hit kill if the person is damaged. Something really good to use in the right situations when they're pretty much right up close to you, when you're, you know, coming around a corner and you see a guy, shoot him a couple times and then jab him real quick. Now these slots, your primary weapon, secondary weapon, so on and so forth, utility items, they're the rest of my 5 through 9 Naga buttons, so they're kind of the pretty accessible buttons. 5 and 6 are more accessible than 7, 8, and 9 if you're not familiar with the Naga. These are my primary and secondary, so my pistol and my primary gun really can easily switch to them while doing anything else, so that if I am reloading or want to just fire off a secondary shot, I can real quick switch to the pistol and then switch back to the primary. And then these are the other buttons for things like rocket launchers, med kits, all of that. 1 through 5 pretty much covers it. Occasionally you'll have 6 if you're like an engineer with a squad beacon, but you know, I usually don't need to hit that in a rush, and I hardly play engineer as it is. But I kept the default binds in there as well in case I needed to hit them for some reason. Obviously fire and aim is typical. I just threw tertiary fire on Z because Z is pretty accessible to me with ESDF, although that's like never used right now. Toggle attachment, again, C. I believe L is the default. C is very accessible for me if I do want to use it. It's right there. This is the default. I don't use that because you can't shoot without it. I guess it's really just for screenshot taking. Same with switch fire group, like these two. X, or B for that matter, but I usually use X, is right next to the Z, X, and C. Very accessible for me if and when I do want to use it, but not something I use very often. Now, auto run, I don't use equals for it. I use left shift because I don't use shift normally for sprint or anything else. So I just tap that shift button if I do want to use my auto run. Not something I use a lot, but I'm very glad that they added it, as oftentimes it is pretty helpful to have on there. Heading over to vehicle and aircraft, that's going to look pretty similar. ESDF for movement. I don't think there's too much here that's that important. The third person cam from PlanetSide 1, same button, gotta have it. Exit vehicle, same as my interact. A lot of the rest is the same. My weapon slots are the same. My afterburn is the same as my sprint. My activate utility is the same as the infantry utility. Cruise control is the same as auto run. A lot of things like that to keep your muscle memory. You don't even need to think. Sprint, afterburner, same thing. Utility, same thing. Cruise control, auto run, same thing. It's something I do in between different games or between different loadouts and keybind variables in the same game, and it really helps build that muscle memory. These seat binds, I don't even use these, and I was using those for other things like taking screenshots and whatever. That's why these are unbound, but those are the default. Aircraft's going to look very similar, with one minor thing that I do need to, well, it's not so minor, I guess. I have cockpit mouse free look on Naga 8, which is just, one of my relatively central Naga buttons in case I want to look around the cockpit. That's something useful to do, although third person is usually better. And then here's the big stuff for me. Pitch up, pitch down. Some of the really advanced pro pilots don't do the pitch up, pitch down thing because you lose a little bit of precision. But it's a really great thing to get used to if you're a beginner to middle level pilot, or even an advanced pilot that's comfortable with it, because it really helps you turn quick. And unless you're very advanced and used to not using it and want to have your mouse for precision, I recommend putting pitch up and pitch down on a key, preferably on your mouse. That's what works for me because I have so many buttons to play with, but even on your keyboard it's helpful. So these are pretty much default. I have my ascend as spacebar, vertical thrust, my descend as crouch. Imagine that, same thought process there. And then the pitch up, pitch down are basically, pitch down is actually both Naga 5 and 6, because in case I'm on my afterburner, which is Naga 2, I want to have that pitch down right below it, which would be Naga 5, and then pitch up is Naga 3, and then right below that is Naga 6 for pitch down, so I can kind of switch to both easily with my thumb. I kept it on 5 so that I can do some of those reverse maneuvers and things like that where you might want to pitch down at the same time that you're afterburnering, and my right thumb would be able to hit both of those buttons at the same time, so that's why it's double bound there. But if you haven't used the pitch up, pitch down, and you're looking to get into flying or increase your ability to turn quick when flying, try binding those to a key, and you basically just use that to complement your normal flying movements by holding those buttons down, and it'll pitch your aircraft up or down for you rather than making ridiculous mouse movements or trying to set your sensitivity too high and then you can't aim. I'm not the best pilot by any stretch of the imagination, but that's my pilot tips for today. The rest is pretty much straightforward, as we said and as we saw with the other vehicles, and this video is getting too long like all of them, so I'm going to let you guys go. I will make some other videos for general settings, HUD, things like that in the near future, and I really hope you guys enjoyed this. I love theory crafting keybinds in any game and settings and mouse sensitivity and all of that. That's something I really get a kick out of, so please leave your comments or questions below. Subscribe if you like what you saw, like it or dislike if you liked it or hated it. Check out the stream, ItZMuRdA.com or twitch.tv/ItZMuRdA_TV. You guys have a great evening, and I will see you soon.